This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we revisit sci-fi, fantasy, and just plain weird shows.
This week, Planet of the Apes, episodes 7 and 8.
Humans are nothing. You have no character, no sense of honor, no loyalty. If they did, you never would have allowed yourself to be brought here. I mean, Galen is risking his life, and you can't even see the danger that he's in because of you, because you are blind and sentimental. And you can't control your thoughts or your emotions, and you will destroy Galen and your friend, and you'll all be destroyed. Oh.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast the Ape High Council doesn't want you to know about. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
I think you like the Ape High Council much more than I do.
You know what I've noticed recently?
What's that?
You keep dodging the question.
Oh, the what's real question?
I realized the last five or six episodes, you've really dodged the question by turning it back on my introduction.
Yeah, you see what I've done there. It's a little bit of what's good for the goose is good for the gander? What is it called?
No, I've just caught on. That's all.
Yeah. So anyways, though, what we're saying is you really like this bureaucratic, these guys. I want to topple this government, this ape government with their stamps and their regulations and their high taxes.
You'd prefer some sort of ape anarchy.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, you would think there would be.
Aperky?
Aperky? Nice.
Nailed it.
Once again. Hashtag.
All right. Well, Jordan, let's get into it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got for us?
We had been talking, I think it was in the first or second episode we were talking about this show, and we were talking about how much stuff there was behind sort of the apes, the idea about how big this sort of fan base is.
Right.
So I started looking a little bit into the merchandise behind the show, and there is so much stuff. So I have page after page, but I'll just I'll talk about
the highlights.
I'll give you the highlights. So obviously the first movie came out in 1968, and the producers didn't really do any marketing. I was reading about, they just didn't think there was any potential for any sort of merchandising rights. This is all pre-Star Wars, right? So that idea wasn't such a big idea. So the only thing they had done in 1968 was the Topps Chewing Gum Company was the first official Planet of the Apes merchandise, and they had a 66 set of the Planet of the Apes bubblegum trading cards.
I do like that
5 cents.
Topps the chewing gum company. I always think of them as a card company, but maybe they started in chewing gum?
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, it was 5 cents for a pack of cards. And then they also did, I think we had talked about this off the air, that they did a record album, which was just the original soundtrack. For some reason, they mentioned that there was also photographs of the cast inside. That's his little selling point for buying the album. And then there was also a few books and stuff, but there wasn't really much beyond that until 1973, where apparently they were saying Ape Mania took over. And what brought about Ape Mania, if that's an actual historical time period,
I think it's an affliction.
Yeah, Ape Mania was weirdly when CBS played all the movies in a row.
Oh, in the prelude to the show.
Yeah, as a prelude, they were just playing it on Friday night, and they just aired them in a row, and apparently people loved it. It was a huge hit, which was what spawned the TV series. But I have a list of things that came out essentially between 1973 and 1975. The long story about this is that the merchandise didn't have the legs they thought it was going to, because it was sort of a kind of a blast of excitement that died really quickly, just like the TV show. So I'll go through a couple of these.
Okay. Tell me which of this stuff is related to the TV show.
The stuff that's related to the TV show?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm curious how much merchandise a one-season TV show could get.
Okay. Mattel produced a submachine gun. I think I have a picture of this. Aladdin, the company, produced an embossed metal lunchbox. Amco produced Adventure Set, which had an ape headquarters, underground ruins, villager's hut. That's pretty much all the sets.
Is this from the TV show?
Yeah.
Wow,
TV show.
I think I saw this actually online. It's like, do you have a photo of it?
No, not yet.
I think it's like, it was like a 3D diorama, obviously, but all the figures you played with were just like cardboard cutouts.
It says it's made out of die-cut fiberboard figures.
Yeah, so cardboard.
Yeah.
It looked cool except for the figures.
There was a Fun-Do modeling molds.
Is
There
that
was,
like a Play-Doh knockoff?
I think so. PlayPal produced a striking Galen plastic piggy bank and another featuring Dr. Zaius. HG Toys made puzzles. Milton Bradley did a board game based on the TV series.
Oh, cool.
Hasbro produced a color view set with pencils and pictures.
Let's get that board game.
Yeah. Anyways, it goes on and on. There was so much stuff. But as I kind of mentioned, everything was between 73 and 75. Basically, the series went off the air. The merchandise just dried up. And that was pretty much it for merchandise until they started redoing the movies again.
That's crazy. So it just all happened in such a short period of time.
Yeah. That Ape Mania. You remember Ape Mania, 73 to 75.
Yeah. I remember it well.
Yeah.
I was driving my 72 something.
Oh, and the one, I forgot one thing. In what year was this? It's, I think, 74. A band called Electric Cowboy anonymously recorded The Planet of the Apes, a musical trip album. I don't know what that
Sounds
means.
great. Where do we get it?
I gotta find it.
Oh, man. I want that.
If anyone has it, please send it in.
I want the board game. I would love to play that board game. What do you think you do in the board game? Do you think it's like you have to go find the metal disc they lost?
I think you have to lose it after a couple tries, and then you just change the plot.
And then like you're constantly being caught by apes and having to escape?
I have to take your shirt off.
Oh, yeah.
One
You got to
thing.
roll this.
Like, oh, lose a turn, take your shirt off.
You roll a 10, take your shirt off.
Yeah, anyways, there's lots of stuff. I can post this list online, but I think it would just bore people. But it's literally pages of just stuff people made.
That's crazy. They
Or
made that
companies
much
made.
stuff in that 2-year period. Man. I mean, this is definitely the most merchandise we've seen for anything.
Oh
we've
yeah, by
watched.
far. Like if you just go on Google or whatever your search device,
Bing?
if you go on Bing like Spider-Man, and remember he Spider-Man used Bing, and everyone's like, what? Anyway, yeah, you'll find a ton of stuff if you're so inclined.
Listen, I'm a little curious. When we started the podcast, I was excited to be like, what kind of crazy merchandise will we find? But what we found is nothing. Nobody has any merchandise for anything.
Yeah, for a lot of the shows, like, well, we started with Tech War. No one wanted anything for Tech War. Beyond Westworld, or what did we else? Harsh Realm, or even shows that people generally really like Space Above and Beyond. There wasn't really any merchandise for it.
It's true, and it lasted almost the full season. So
Yeah.
well, it did 24 episodes, and I didn't see anything, and that seems natural to make merchandise for. God bless you, Planet of the Apes, giving us all this merch to look at. All right, shall we get into it?
Let's get into.
Are you
these
done
two
talking
episodes.
about merchandise?
I think so.
Here's the IMDb summary for episode 7, The Surgeon. Galen risks his freedom and life by contacting his old sweetheart, Kyra, when Verdun is seriously injured. I've edited this down a little bit.
Yeah.
That was courtesy of Ape Freak.
Oh, Ape Freak's back.
Ape Freak's back.
Yeah, classic Ape Freak. One thing I noticed right off the bat of the show, right at the beginning of the show, is that for all the time they've spent traveling and running away from the apes, they haven't got very good at hiding. They're just walking in the middle of fields and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like go in between trees and stuff, you know?
You want them to have a little more camouflage, a little more stealthiness?
A little bit. So because as we'll find out in the first couple scenes, they're just walking casually in the middle of like a field, and an ape shoots them.
I mean, did you feel this started very abruptly?
It did, yes.
It felt almost like median res or something. Like it almost started in the middle of a gunfight.
Yeah, it felt almost like they lost the first couple scenes of the episode. I went, it's fine.
Yeah, it's like it starts almost instantly into a gunfight. Verdun is immediately shot in the chest, in the stomach.
Well, I wasn't sure where he shot. It's very unclear. We just know he's shot, and then it seems like 45 minutes that Pete carries him away very slowly, that they don't shoot at Pete, but he just carries him on his shoulders very, very slowly away.
Well, we do know one thing, because after he gets shot by that bullet, he's like, I can feel it. It's close to a nerve.
Is that what he says?
Yeah, that's how they know where it is. He's like, I can feel it close to a nerve.
Right, yeah. Well, you always can tell when things are close to a nerve.
But as they mentioned in the synopsis, they're in luck because Galen happens to have dated a top ape surgeon.
Yeah, were you disappointed that we don't really get to find out more about their original wooing?
You wanted to know? You wanted to see them get down?
Well, I think it would be interesting to see the interpersonal dynamics of ape dating.
I mean, we'll get into it. We see a little bit of it.
We see a little bit.
But you're right. It's not that. It is kind of fun, though, because this episode, it's so fast off the start because they just want to do an ape medical drama.
Yeah.
And I could not have been more excited about that idea.
Yeah. It's sort of like they were watching MASH and went, we can do that. We can do a MASH episode.
It's great. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
You mentioned it, I think, last week. You made a joke about like having a basketball player cameo on the, and you'd never know because they're in a mask. And I realized, I'm like, oh, this is what that show should be. A medical drama one week. Next week, it's a basketball episode. Let's get a bunch of basketball players in ape masks. Because honestly, I was just like, this is great. I like this so much more than the typical run, hide, chase fashion. I was just like, let's see aspects of ape life and like steal other formats and just use them and just put ape masks on everyone.
But they don't really lean into it that heavy. I mean, I think you're right. I think it probably would be better. They sort of touch on that. I don't think they go full ape medical drama.
I think they do pretty well. Like it starts off like basically like an episode of Grey's Anatomy or something, because we meet Kyra. She's she's in this medical facility outside of Central City, and she just finished doing a surgery.
You notice what is she doing after she finished surgery? She's washing her hands.
Yeah.
Don't you think there's a vast inconsistency of the beliefs of the apes?
It is quite clear in this episode that their medical knowledge, well, I would say watching this, I'm like, this is the Nick. Like this is turn of the century. They're learning, like they've lost a patient, but they learned a lot from the anatomy. They don't know a lot of things yet, but they're figuring it out.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like 1890s New York or something. Like that's the time frame.
My point was they have clearly indoor plumbing, they have surgical tools, they have lights, they have all these sorts of things, but in the farms they still don't know how to make a fence.
Well, maybe this is what it is.
Maybe
there's a civilization in Central City, and someone later in the episode will refer to a man or an ape who loses his cart when it gets stolen from him as a dumb country ape.
Did they say that?
Yeah, I believe one of Urko's people are like, that dumb country ape doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, he ain't one of your fancy city lawyers.
That's right.
He's a dumb country ape.
But I say it's kind of like this sort of Grey's Anatomy medical drama thing is because she's washing up. She's lamenting a patient she's lost. The director of the hospital, what's his name? I wrote it down. Director Leander. He comes in and he's trying to like comfort her. She's like, we learned a lot. Don't worry about it too much. And then he's just like, hey, are you coming to my conference later? She's just like, I hadn't heard about your conference. He's like, well, it's tonight at my apartment. I'm making a vegetable casserole. Your attendance is mandatory.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right, I'll see you there. And it's very much like flirty and fun and like a medical show where they're all dating each other. Like I was like, this is great. Like this is so good to watch these apes just run this formula.
Didn't you think he is much smoother than Galen is? Because right after this, Galen makes an appearance. So we know that she used to date Galen or whatever their relationship was.
They used to...
They used to what?
Go to Bone Town?
That's right. That's where they used to go. After she talks to this doctor, she goes into her, I guess it's her office, and she just notices flowers on a table, and she's like, that's got to be Galen. Only Galen leaves dead flowers on a table. And of course, he's very creepily behind her, like in a corner. And I assume that's how he always did stuff in the relationship.
He just appeared out of nowhere with dead flowers.
Yeah, and so that's what she was like, because she knew right away. She's like, that's got to be Galen.
Well, it's true. And you know, she reluctantly kind of agrees to help him. But it's very funny because whatever relationship they had, we never get into, but it must have been like relatively serious, because there's actually a great line here where as the sort of scene ends and she's agreed to help this human, she sort of like turns the camera. She's like, just when I almost found happiness again, Galen shows up to wreck it.
Yeah, classic Galen.
It's just like a real love affair they had.
Mm-hmm. Do you notice in this episode, they've sort of played a little bit with humans almost sounding like your classic caveman sort of thing, you know, like, me go here and all that sort of thing. In this episode, they're quite articulate, and like maybe it is just the people working at the hospital. Everyone's a little bit better educated.
Yeah, they have a bunch of human slaves who are called orderlies. So,
yeah.
I mean, they're essentially not quite nurses, but they clearly have some medical ability.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least they clean up after the surgeries.
Right. All the dead bodies.
But yeah, it's interesting. Like there's certainly a level of technology and sophistication in this episode that we haven't seen, but I think it maybe is because it's so close to Central City.
Right.
Galen has to go back basically and get Verdun, and they sort of steal this cart I mentioned from an ape, and they bring him back to this hospital, and they've kind of built this cover for him where he's going to show up and he's going to be a visiting surgeon. Mm-hmm. So he's got a fake name, the whole foofara, and his human servants are there with him, and one of them was shot in a bear accident.
Was that what it was?
I think they were attacked by a bear, and they were fighting off the bear. They're like, Verdun got shot, and now we need to help him. And my favorite part about all this is, did you notice that Galen puts on a very posh accent for the entire time he's a doctor.
I didn't notice. No,
He has a weird doctor accent the entire episode. That's not his normal voice.
He's really selling the character.
He is really into this character.
So what we find is he has enlisted the help of his ex-lover to help the surgery for Alan, but she doesn't know human anatomy. Like,
No.
what's she gonna do? I wish there was some sort of ancient book on human anatomy that someone might have that they would be able to find.
I mean, they thankfully are close to Central City.
And then let me ask you, you mentioned this last week about the geography and what their journey was. Did they just backtrack all the way? Because seemingly they've been on the, let's say, a couple weeks, they've been on the lam, as it were.
They have basically, if my map is correct, backtracked from Oakland back to Phoenix.
Yeah, so it's a big trip, but I mean, I think at this point we just throw the map out. They just need to get back to Central City. And
I think I'm wrong.
Yeah. So, and why do they have to go to Central City?
Because the hospital's just outside of it. They'd be lucky because Dr. Zaius' house is near Central City as well.
Yeah, and so he conveniently has a book on human anatomy that they want to help give to the surgeon so that she can do the surgery. But let's say, I don't know if it's here where you see Dr. Zaius' apartment, but I'll just say now, my favorite thing is that for some reason, and I don't know if we've seen this before, but Dr. Zaius has a statue of himself.
Yes, I mean, that is what we see. Before we move into Dr. Zaius' house, I just want to say really quickly.
Okay.
This is one thing I liked about the episode is I thought the Kara character was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, even when she's like, I can't take the bullet out, there's too much damage, I don't know how to get inside this anatomy. Her exact line when she's saying she can't do this surgery is she says, to operate in ignorance is butchery.
That's nice.
There's quite a few nicely written lines around like being a doctor, and I felt like all the doctor stuff was like fun and dramatic.
Do you think the anatomy between like a chimpanzee and a human is that different though?
Do I think it?
Yeah.
No, but I don't know anything. I'm an idiot.
But you're not an ape. You're just a dumb country ape.
I'm just a dumb country ape. If you put a human and an ape beside me, I'd kill them both the same in surgery.
Well, you're ruthless that way.
Well, I'm also not a surgeon.
And we mentioned that Galen's fake name is Dr. Adrian.
No, we didn't.
Yes, Dr. Adrian.
Such a good doctor name.
It's so far my second favorite ape name. The first one, of course, being
Jason
the ape.
But yeah, we'll get back into them getting this anatomy textbook. Basically, Galen takes Burke, and they go off, and they pretend to be. They continue in their doctor ruse and like tell some ape cops they're off to talk to Dr. Zaius because he's had a heart attack or something. They arrive at his house. They jimmy open a lock and steal his human anatomy book, which I guess Galen knows about because he used to hang out there a lot when he was interviewing to be an assistant.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you sort of need the knowledge that he was his former assistant, but if we remember from the first episode, he was his assistant all of 30 seconds before he left.
I guess there's family friends. Maybe they hung out there a lot. But you're right. There, as soon as we walk into this house, there's a huge bust of Dr. Zaius. I immediately made a note. I'm like, has a huge bust of himself.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But and you know what I love though is they set up. They don't really commit to it, but it's the reason there's a bust there is they're like, oh, this will be great. We'll pretend Zaius is sick. We'll put him in.
They put him on the stretcher.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, his face, but it's like that wouldn't convince anyone. And they also don't really do the scene you think they're gonna do, where like someone looks by and peeks under the blanket, like, oh, it's definitely Dr. Zaius or whatever it is. Well, they don't do that.
That's it. They're like, how are we gonna get out of here now that we have the book? We don't have Dr. Zaius. They lay the statue across the thing. Yeah. They put a bunch of pillows underneath to like give him some, but like none of it looks like it will sell at all. And then they just walk out the door and you never see any more of it.
Right, exactly.
It was a wasted opportunity for a good comedy.
For a good comedy, yeah. Oh, and let me mention one thing. We learned that the apes, their strategy for dealing with humans that are sick are just letting them rest. That's their solution for all human ailments is letting them rest. Yeah. And if they get better, it's like, great. And if they don't, oh, well, they died.
Yeah. What they're doing for Alan Verdun is very unusual.
Right.
He's like feverish. He's hallucinating a lot. The various, what do you call them? Staff. The staff at the
orderlies.
The orderlies at the hospital, the human orderlies, don't really like what's happening because it's kind of special treatment and it's weird to them. So they're not exactly making a lot of friends while they're there. Mm-hmm. But now that they kind of have this anatomy textbook, Kira's like, I'll do the surgery, but I just had to look at him. He is going to bleed out, but it's before I can get this bullet out of him. Like looking at these notebooks, It's not going to happen. And of course, now's a good time for the astronauts' far advanced knowledge to come in to save the day.
Yeah, as always.
And Brick explains to them how blood transfusions work.
And what we find out is that they actually know what blood transfusions are, and they have tried it one other time.
It's true. It was nice to hear this. Like, this
Yeah.
wasn't one of the times where they're just like dumb apes. They're like, yeah, we've thought of this as well, but it didn't work. They just don't know about blood types.
Yeah. And what I like though about that is that they tried it on one person, and in a couple scenes later they're going to try a blood transfusion again, and they use it on the exact same person that they tried the first time. I like there's only one person you could try blood transfusions with.
Well, I'm not entirely sure how you tell a blood type, but it basically, Pete Burke goes around and he takes blood from all of the humans. And there are only 2 humans that can possibly have the right blood type. The woman they tried it with before who killed the patient, and the other guy who they say he ran away when he found out you're going to take all of his blood.
Yeah, I like that. And let me mention one more thing. I was excited because Alan and I have the same blood type.
AB?
AB negative.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. So I thought if I was there, I really could have helped him.
I had this conversation the other day. I don't know what my blood type is.
You don't know?
How would I know? How do you find out?
If you donate blood.
Oh, no thanks.
Well, you don't.
I'm not going to let you take all my blood away.
Yeah, exactly.
I run away when I hear that.
Yeah, well, as we've mentioned, you're just a dumb country ape.
I'm just a dumb country ape. Leave me alone. And my blood. Leave it inside. All right. This is a subplot that runs out through the entire episode. But basically, the woman they find who has the right blood type has a whole arc in this episode. Can you paraphrase what that is? It doesn't come into play, really.
Yeah.
But it's insane.
So the arc is she is treated less than a slave by everybody. So she doesn't have a name. They've taken her name, her identity.
Away. They call her evil.
Yeah, she's just evil. She's treated terribly. They sort of just abuse her constantly.
She gets beat on pretty badly at some point.
And what you come to find out is why is because, and her own admission is that she's killed someone.
Her brother.
And so you find out the other man who's really abusing her is her dad, and he was like, she's not my daughter anymore, and blah, blah, blah. And the whole thing, I actually thought they should have pushed this further, because I was like, wouldn't it be cool if she actually did kill someone? But what it was she was the person who gave the original transfusion, and her brother did not survive. Thus, she kind of killed him.
Well, her brother had been in a hunting accident and was dying, and they tried a blood transfusion to save him, but he died, and they blamed her.
There's a couple kind of uncomfortable scenes of the way they're treating her, but it's sort of they really quickly build up a backstory for her, but it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really pay off.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't really help too that her only interactions of kindness are with Burke, but he mostly seems to be flirting with her. Like, he's not showing her compassion.
Yeah, and this will come about in the next episode too. I think Pete might be the one you got to watch out with.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a horn dog.
Yeah, yeah.
He's no Galen.
He's like, wait a minute, have you been abused in some way? Are you vulnerable? Well, that's my type.
Look out.
Look out, I'm from the past.
Burke's here. But yeah, essentially what will happen for her at the end of her arc is the transfusion works with Verdun. Her father forgives her, and I don't know, she's a hero or something.
And her name is Bridget.
Her name is Bridget. Very important.
Yeah.
Urko and Zaius finally make an appearance now because Urko's investigating the break-in at Zaius' house. It's kind of an interesting scene because Zaius doesn't kind of want an investigation to happen. Like, Urko's forcing him to look into the break-in at his house, and he's kind of like, it's fine. I don't really want to deal with it. And Zaius is just like, and Urko's just like, well, we got to look into it. It's a serious crime to break into a High Council ape's chambers. And the essential thing of it is Urko knows or suspects that probably what was stolen was some human knowledge. Mm-hmm. And Zaius knows the anatomy test was taken, and he just basically doesn't want to get into it. Like, it's back to the politics. It's like this sort of back and forth between them of who's doing what in the Ape Council and who kind of has the power. So he finally has to like admit, yes, I lost this anatomy book, and Urko pretty quickly is like, all right, well, I got a pretty good idea who took it, and I'm pretty sure I can figure out where they went. I mean, partly because this whole country ape thing with the stolen cart, like, he's sort of piecing together where they might be, but it's an interesting dynamic. I think I like some of these scenes the best is when Urko and Zaius go head to head.
Well, I actually think you're right. I think they are some of the better scenes, and they keep bringing them back in because I think the show's missing that. They're missing that bit of not only having that actual antagonist in Urko, but having the power struggle between the two and the two sides of the argument, and it's kind of missing from the show. So it feels like the writers are like, oh, by the way, they're back by the city, so you can see those two characters who we've left in the past, you know?
It's true. I mean, they constantly are having to find ways to bring them out into the field, and this was kind of at least a way to like bring them back home. But I mean, I like it. It works for me. It's
Yeah.
maybe not as perfectly executed as it could be, but for my money, I'm enjoying those scenes with them. But that really does bring us into this surgery where Kira's cutting open Verdun, which I was really hoping we'd get some cool surgery shots, but they really keep us at bay.
Yeah.
The director Leander, her beau, drops by mid-surgery, and it's kind of fun. He's intrigued by this new blood transfusion they're doing. Galen really has to like play up his I'm a doctor from far away thing. It's very funny. He has like weird beliefs that he keeps trying to like push that makes it kind of makes the director kind of think he's a little bit of a doofus, I think. That's why the director's not
it was
put off by
it was
him.
almost like a humor's sort of belief.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, do this and the evil spirit comes out and all this, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he's just like, well, where I come from, we don't take it with medical sciences. We take some spirit juice and it takes it away. Except for what can't they what can't Galen figure out? He says.
Oh, I don't know. What was it?
He says, the only thing that's vexing us is the common cold.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And that's when the director starts laughing because he's like, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah. So now, do you think he's quite accurately portraying that a type of doctor, or do you think he's just playing someone who he doesn't need as much medical knowledge so he won't get caught out?
I think it's a little bit of that. I think he's presenting himself in a way that makes this man not threatened by him, to kind of leave him alone. I mean, even in this scene where they're doing the surgery, the director is like, hey, you got to bleed there. You want to tie that off or what? And Galen's like, I'd love to see a big fancy doctor like you tie off a bleed. And the guy's just like, well, that's incredibly stupid, but okay.
Yeah. And you get the sense so that
he's catching on.
He's catching on and probably quicker than they, it even seems like he should be.
Yeah. I mean, essentially he catches sight of the anatomy book and basically he finds out, it's just like, hey, this is whatever this is. I know this is illegal knowledge. Like you shouldn't have this. And Galen has to pull a scalpel on him and say, you can't go anywhere. Like, we'll kill you. We need to save this guy. And the doctor's like, all right, well, if you're going to keep me here, I might as well be useful. I'm not going to let someone die on my watch. And he sort of gets in there, helps with the surgery. They have this cool, like, coconutty. Did you notice the respirator they have? On, like, it's,
yeah. There was a couple of funny things. There's this weird respirator thing. I almost look like it was made out of leather. There's also the doctor. What's her face? What's her name? Kira. She has a stone desk. A stone desk, but it sounds about right. A stone desk, but it also has like stone drawers. And then my favorite part was in the very beginning when she's washing her hands, it looks like they just took tinfoil and put it all over like an actual sink. And I'm like, oh yeah, look at that weird, badly bent metal. Anyways, but yes, they have a sort of like a leathery sort of oxygen mask
with like a breathing apparatus that's breathing in and out, and he sort of helps get that going. And they seem to have anesthesia. They've put him out, so it's not a bad surgery scene. It kind of shows like the level of technology these surgeons have anyway.
I mean, and it's a dangerous surgery because it was right near the nerve.
It was right by the nerve. Even she said so. Ultimately, they're able to make scientific history by closing the wound and saving Verdun. And it's a big, and at the end of the day, Kyra saves the day. And it's all sort of wrapping up there until they hear the sound of galloping horses.
Yeah.
Urko's arrived. He's come to search for his missing astronauts. Of course, at this point, we see the director, Leander. He's come around to them. He takes Urko in. He's just like, hey, you can look around my hospital if you want, but don't go in that door. We recently had some black plague come in, and the Black Death is in there, so you don't want to go in there. And that pretty much scares Urko off. And they are able to like send them off on their own little cart again, and it sort of wraps up. Like they get away with it. The surgery was a success, and no one died.
And then the little subplot that doesn't matter is the dad goes, "Oh, I'm cool with her now."
Yeah, I
and
forgive my daughter.
And she's like, "Yeah, I don't mind the last 20 years of abuse."
Yeah, you're forgiven.
Yeah, and that's it.
I mean, it is maybe something that's it's hard to hold it against this era of television, but it's kind of the one thing that I think is like I'm disliking the most with these episodes is the endings have to be so like pat. They have to be so tied up so tightly that it's just like it's a kind of fun. There's some good drama. I like the medical bits. I was just like, I just wish if it could just spill over a little into another episode. But
because it has to reset, and it has to reset hard every time, right?
So I'm not going to hold it against Joe because I know that's just the style of the era. But oh man, like it just feels like a few pushes beyond those boundaries. And I think,
it almost does feel like you could do a show where every time they come to a town, they sort of, in one way or another, maybe convert's the wrong word, but they sort of convert apes into a
Cause
different
a
way.
change.
Yes. And so you'd almost think that this would start developing, sort of like
It could even be like someone coming along and is like, hey, did you hear about X town? They did this, or this farmer over here. Like if you just heard like
they're having an effect on things.
whispers through the mill, right?
Right. Because you would
Whispers through the mill, classic phrase.
Yeah, I love that movie. Anyways, but yeah, you're not going to get a lot of that. Instead, we're going to get this next episode, which let me just tell you right now, I did not care for.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Here's the IMDb summary for episode 8, The Deception.
Good title.
Quite the title, I know.
Yeah.
Phoebus, I know it's asking a lot for him to love someone who's blind, but do you think it's possible?
Do you want an honest answer?
Of course.
No. I do not think that it is possible.
I can do anything that a female with sight can do.
Except to recognize the truth. He is not an ape. That you can trust.
I don't believe you. I think you're the one that's not to be trusted. You're supposed to be his friend, yet you speak of him as an enemy.
He is my friend. But I know him.
Galen, Verdun, and Burke befriend a chimpanzee named Fauna, the blind daughter of a human-friendly ape who's killed. I've also edited this one down, but that was courtesy of Ape Freak as well.
Nice. And I have a note on this episode that this whole episode felt like it was taken out of Little House on the Prairie, but a bad episode of Little House on the Prairie.
I mean, it's a rough episode, and we'll get into it, but it essentially is just a thinly veiled KKK allegory.
Yeah, and it doesn't hit those marks at all.
It doesn't quite work. I mean, this is no Black Klansman.
Yeah.
Or what would it be? What are they called here? Oh, Ape Dragoon, Human Dragoon.
Human Dragoon, yeah.
But it essentially starts off at a funeral for Lucian, father of Fauna, as his tombstone says.
Yeah, what would your tombstone say? Luke, eater of pizza.
Luke, eater of pizza. Luke, unsuccessful podcast.
Oh man, if mine just says podcaster, something's went wrong.
In quotes, though.
Just in quotes, yeah. Oh, that's sad.
Not even a real one.
But the interesting part of this is less that they have tombstones is that they also have very human funerals.
Yeah.
Didn't you think that they would have had something slightly different?
No, it is very human. There's a eulogy. It's all the same.
Like they might as well all be standing around with black umbrellas as it rained.
100%. But it's sunny California.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Essentially, Lucian was killed by humans, they say. His daughter, who is blind.
Yeah. By the way, I think I didn't notice she was blind right away. Are we supposed to know right away?
No. I think it's a
Okay.
big surprise, like three or four scenes in. But like she's railing against humans. She's really against them. She blames them and their horrible animal ways for killing her father. Her uncle Cessnus, he's a crazily gray-haired ape.
I liked him. I like the look of him.
He had a great character design. I agree. He wants to drive humans out, and he's one of these apes who belong to the Dragoons, this order of basically the KKK. They all wear masks over their head,
but they're sort of brown hoods that have a tiny bit of ape features in the mask. Like
it pushes out on the snout.
Yeah,
for sure. But he doesn't like humans, and they live in a region where the humans outnumber the apes. They're really trying to make this kind of the 60s South kind of ideas. Is the world they're trying to build, and I think everyone meant well when they made this episode, and none of it's like obscene, none of it's like way out in left field.
No, it just misses the mark.
It just doesn't work. They're not landing it. It doesn't quite make sense. We catch up with Verdun, Burke, and Galen, and they're just like crashing at this guy's house.
Yeah, I know. It was a weird thing because I was like, they're just there, and it just felt like an inconsistent characterization of humans. It was just like, oh yeah, they're just at some guy's house. He's just like living his life, and I was like, it was weird. But what I like more than this is they almost immediately go fishing. But what was weird about the fishing is they don't use those spears. They just learned all about all the swimming under the fire and all that stuff.
Sure, they're just using a regular fishing rod now.
Yeah.
All that work for nothing.
I know. Anyway.
Well, they're out fishing. One of these Dragoon mobs rides up on the house, just classic style, torches in hand. They like lasso the owner and drag him down the street. They burn down his whole house, and they kind of Galen and the team come back, and they pick up the dying man. I don't know if he's dying, maybe just injured as his house burns. And Galen can't understand this level of just like insensitivity. Like, who would do such a random attack? And Verdun and Burke, of course, recognize it from their time. I guess we're supposed to kind of get from the dialogue, they've heard about the murder of Lucian, and they kind of know about these dragoons already. Like, I guess this area is kind of that them hanging out with this guy. They've learned all this news already. And Verdun and Burke kind of are like, well, this is going to spiral out of control. We know how this kind of thing goes back in our time. So there's only the one thing we can do about this. We're going to have to solve this murder mystery.
It was like, oh, okay.
I mean, an interesting choice. And I kind of like this episode as the first episode where like the plot didn't happen to them. They're like walking through town. They're like little hoboing and being like, oh, yeah, get involved in that.
I never thought of that. I suppose you're right. Yeah, this is the first time they're sort of driving the action.
Because they could have walked away from this in 2 seconds.
Yeah, they probably should have. Also would have made a more interesting episode just to watch them walk around.
I don't know. There's some interesting stuff coming up.
Oh, and now, really soon, this is going to be the scene where they're introduced to the blind ape.
Yeah, they drop in to get some clues.
For the life of me, I couldn't catch the names that Galen gives them. Because the scene basically is she's like on the coast. This is clearly block shooting with the other episode that was on the water. She's on the coast, or just like looking over, although she can't see anything. And they sort of show up. She thinks they're apes. Galen gives them ape names, and that's kind of what happens this episode. Is they're pretending to be apes because she can't see them, which is also kind of mean. But is one named Pardo?
Yeah, one's named Pardo.
And what was the other one?
You know what? I didn't write the fake ape names down.
But isn't it weird because like I think they said it once, and then I was like, I don't know what their names are.
I think I guess that's. I mean, I just chose not to pay too much attention because I'm like they all give themselves fake names almost every episode.
Right.
I can't track all of their fake ape names.
Right.
But yeah, because she's blind, the key of it is Galen covers up the fact they're humans because she starts railing immediately against humans, and he's like, well, I can't tell them that I've got 2 humans here or she's going to freak out and we're never going to solve the murder of her father. So he kind of just like, she asks if they're apes and he just kind of doesn't say no.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, sure. Well, no, he gives them very ape names. That's the thing. So it's like humans don't have names like that except for Jason.
But yeah, she tells him a bit about her dad being murdered, and she says he tried to befriend all these humans and then they murdered him, and that's why she hates them now. And they kind of learn a bit about her. Like she used to love to read, and her dad used to read her stories, and they kind of like connect with her a little, and she loves the sound of old Burke's voice. It reminds her of an old lover she had. And suddenly Uncle Cessness comes back, and they kind of have to book it because Uncle Cessness is blind, and he's going to know these are 2 people are humans.
But what was the thing that turned her? I think I missed it. Because they're talking to her, and she's sort of like, they're like, hey, can we come hide out in your place? And she's like, okay. But what was it that made her trust them and know to hide them?
Well, when Uncle Cessness comes back, she hears them riding up, and they're like, well, we got to go before he sees us. So nice to meet you. And then she's like, why do you have to go? Like, just stay for dinner. And he's like, oh, well, we're on the run from the law.
Right.
Because we read some forbidden books, and now the Ministry of Knowledge, they said, is out, is out to get us. And she's just like, well, I don't think knowledge should be outlawed. I love books. She's like, I'm going to hide you in my secret cave in the forest. That's where her and her old lover used to meet.
The show, if you ranked it just based on various caves,
level of cave,
yeah, this would be a high ranking show because there's caves up the wazoo.
It's all caves all the time. Yeah. And this one's quite a nice cave too.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a nice cave that she has. She doesn't even know.
Well, she used to know. She used to be able to see. That's where she used to meet her
true.
lover before she went blind, and then he left her because she was so gross and blind.
But they do a great scene in here, and I'm probably jumping ahead, Luke. But they do the scene you're expecting, which is at one point she's like, Pete, I love you so much. I love your voice. Can I just touch your face? And so then Galen has to get in front, and she's like, yeah, you look just like I thought. And it's this thing. I was like, I feel bad for her. She's getting hoodwinked.
That is kind of the subplot of it. It's like, it is kind of uncomfortable what they're doing to this poor blind girl.
But they decide at this point she's sort of going to leave them here. We do find out that they're called dragoons, and they basically decide, if we want to figure stuff out, Galen, you should go undercover with the dragoons and pretend to be one of them, and then we'll figure out kind of what's happening.
Yeah, and Galen joins up with Uncle Cessness and sort of makes up a whole story about like, those are all the humans. Can I join your cool murder outfit? And he's just like, I don't know if you can take it. He's like, I used to murder humans all the time. And he's like, you're in.
Yeah, it's not a hard process to get into this group.
I will tell you this though, I did catch, because he gives 2 fake names this episode, one to Fauna and then one to Uncle Cessness. I did catch the name he gave to Uncle Sesame.
What was that?
Beavis.
It wasn't, was it?
It was either Beavis or Peevis.
No, I like Beavis. That's great.
But I want to believe it was Beavis.
Yeah, that's great.
Because the entire episode, he's like, "Hey, Beavis, you coming to the Dragoon meeting?"
I have to make a confession. I have trouble with the names in this show, partially because whatever's wrong with my brain, and the other part, all the actors are having difficulty speaking with the ape mouths, so everything kind of comes up like, it's like watching a bad ventriloquist a lot of the time. So I'm like, I don't know what anyone's name is.
But yeah, he's invited to join the Dragoons pretty quickly. Verdun goes off on a little adventure of his own, and he follows a gorilla through the forest because he just sees one riding by, and he's like, I'm gonna go follow Burke, see you later. And he kind of finds the Dragoon meeting place, which is important to a plan later in the episode. But while this is happening, Burke goes off and he bumps into Fauna, and she's like, "Hey, you want to tell me a story?" And he tells her the story of Ape Robinson Crusoe.
I like that. That's the easiest thing. You just tell a story, then you just go, ape. Yeah. You ever heard the story of Ape Catcher in the Rye? It's pretty good.
It's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
But as a result of this story, Fauna finally admits she's falling in love with Burke. She tells this to Galen.
And it starts getting uncomfortable here. And we're going to get to it. But they do have a real payoff later on. But it does start, like at this point, I'm like, are these two going to get together?
This might be some of the stuff that works the best in this episode.
I agree with you, yeah.
Because when Fauna tells Galen, she's like, "Do you think he could ever love a blind ape like me?" Like, she's just like, could your friend ever love someone who's blind? And Galen is like freaked out. Like, he's a little prejudiced and a little grossed out by the idea that she would be attracted to a human. Like, and granted, species on species stuff, that is like gross. Don't do that to anybody. Don't fucking ape. But in the context of this metaphor, I thought it was good because Galen, our hero, does himself carry prejudices he can't beat down.
Yeah.
Fauna's really pushing Galen though to set her up with Burke, and Galen freaks out and he's just like, "He's not an ape. You can trust."
Yeah, he really saved it.
He pulled it out of the fire there real quickly. But eventually he goes back, tells Burke what's going on. Him and Galen kind of make amends because Galen's pretty upset. Like, "Why are you stringing her along? That's horrible." And he's like, I didn't mean to. Like, I don't.
He's like, "I can't help it. Look at this body.
Look at me. Listen to this voice."
Yeah. I got everything an ape would want.
How can you not want to stick it in this voice? And he goes and sees, what's her name? Fauna. Thank you. And kind of tries to explain why they can't be together by telling her what I think is a Bible story about Isaac, Jacob, and Esau.
Yep.
And she really doesn't get the story though. Like, he's basically describing a story where someone tells a mild lie.
Well, it's funny because he tells a story with a very nebulous sort of moral, but the whole point of the story is that Esau's hairy and Jacob is not. So, and he fools his father. That's the point of the story. And he's basically trying to say, like, by the way, that's what we're doing to you. But she's too busy trying to find the actual moral of the story. Right. So that's what's confusing about it. What
she does get though is Burke's not into her, so she's pretty heartbroken.
Yeah, and yeah, she takes it badly, because to be fair, she's a blind ape. She's like, I don't have many options, you know. I found a nice guy with a nice voice I like.
Good face, touched his face.
Yeah, touched his face. Definitely was not. They just didn't stick another ape in front of him.
No, definitely not.
Why would you ever do that to a blind ape?
Why would you do that to someone? Yeah. But at this point, Verk and Verdun basically decide that they're going to help out, which is this is a weird point in it because I had to really go back to that original funeral scene and remember a character we haven't seen in 25 minutes.
Yeah, Scarface.
Well, not even him. I'm talking about the cop Purdox. He's like the local constable.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And in the first scene, they vaguely mention the Dragoons, and Purdox is like, "I don't like humans, but like I don't agree with what these Dragoons are doing. Like, it's against the law, and I need to catch those guys if I can, even maybe more than these killers," he thinks, because they're going to cause so much trouble. But basically, Verdun and Burke decide they're going to, I guess, get the Dragoons arrested so that they can solve the crime themselves. I don't know. They bust into the police station and then like jump on the first gorilla ape they see, and they're a cop they see, and they're holding him down, being like, "Listen to us. We can figure this out. We're gonna help you catch these Dragoons. You got to help us, Purdox." And the ape the gorilla they're laying on top is like, "I'm not Purdox."
Yeah. It was a kind of funny scene. I didn't think it worked as well as it could, but it's a cute scene that they've gone through this whole thing. It's like, that's not even the right guy.
Well, and it's such a weird, because it is like a case of mistaken identity, or they can't tell the difference between apes. But in a movie, in an episode about like racism, is it is it funny to do a scene where your lead characters who are fighting the racism also can't tell the difference between like two characters?
The answer is yes.
But essentially Purdox is there. He's like, hey, let's have a conversation, kind of. There's some indication that they're locked up for a night, but we never see it. They're kind of just trying to convince him, hey, come with us. We know where the Dragoons meet. Our friend's going there right now. We can catch them all in the act, basically. But Purdox isn't buying any of this. And what we are left with is Galen stuck at this meeting where he's indoctrinated into the Dragoons, given a mask, and then they're like, and here's your gun. You're going to get to kill a human next raid.
Yeah, and he's all like, oh, I think I'm just going to stay here and look at the stars.
Well, they kind of like have they do the induction. There's a little bit of a speech, and it's all over in like a minute and a half. I'm like, well, let's all go home. And Galen's like looking around. He's like, I got to buy some time. So he keeps like trying to give more speeches himself. And at the end of the day, he's just like, well, why don't I just hang out here until someone shows up? It was a funny scene. I didn't fully understand their plan though, so I didn't get if he was trying to buy time or what was happening. But essentially, he tries to buy the time by telling them, hey, remember I told you earlier on that humans had robbed me one time? I saw those humans. They're down in a seaside cave. We should go down there and get them. Let's go get them right now, you guys. Are we not Dragoons? Let's go get them.
Yeah, are we not Dragoons?
And the leader of the Dragoons is like, it's awfully dark. Can we just go in the morning? And everyone's like, yeah, let's go in the morning. Let's go in first light. And I'm just like, what? Seems like the worst way to commit these kind of crimes.
It's a casual group, you know? Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
So we kind of catch up the next morning. Purdox is still debating with Verdun and Burke at the police station. Galen, I guess, has walked down overnight to this police station, and you kind of see him like peek through a curtain in a window and like give a very comical like, whoa, what are they doing? He comes in with his mask on and basically takes Purdox hostage too. Like, I don't know, like the only way they can get this cop to do his job is to like take him hostage apparently. Yeah. And they basically ride him out toward the seaside cave in the morning. So he's like, hey, we're going to show you where these guys are. In fact, they get out there and they see the Dragoons riding up and they're like, here's your gun back. Go arrest them.
And she's on the cliff now.
Yes. Fauna has shown up. She's on the cliff. Is she suicidal from the heartbreak?
It looks like it.
It does appear that way, but she does seem to be mournful on top of the cliff.
But basically what happens is she like they'll start like their roughhousing starts happening.
Purdox goes down and like tries to arrest them.
Yeah.
The lead gorilla takes off his mask and he's got a huge scar on his face, which is cool, which is a super cool.
I thought it looked good, yeah. I
don't know where that ape was from.
I also don't know that.
It was revealed to us as if like this was supposed to be some reveal.
I agree, because what would you think it is it's going to be the uncle, or it's going to be.
Well, we know the uncle's part of it.
I know, but you know what I mean. Like you think, oh, it's going to be this reveal, but it's like, oh, it's that guy with the scar, and you're like, who's the guy with the scar? And I missed it too. So I thought it was just me, because I'll be honest, at this point I was just like looking out the window at birds because this episode was so boring. So I was like, oh, maybe I just missed something.
I wonder if he was maybe at the funeral, like the police officer. I think they might have said a bunch of things at that funeral that like were hard to follow once Burke and Verdun came in, because we never saw those characters again for a while. But yeah, they have a big standoff. I gotta say, that cop's pretty brave. Like, they all had guns and he's just like, I'm roasting you, all of you. I'm by myself. There's no backup coming. Yeah. And while they're kind of having this argument about like whether they should arrest them and like whether he's on the human side or not, Fauna, I don't think she jumps. She seems to slip.
She seems to slip, yeah.
She slips and falls off the cliffside into the ocean. And as we all know, apes can't swim.
And as we also know, Pete and Alan love saving people in the water.
They do. Pete leaps off the cliff. He swims up. He grabs her. Verdun leisurely jumps in a little bit later and helps.
Yeah.
And
he's recovering from surgery.
That is true. He did have that major surgery last episode. And essentially they save her. They pull her out. And they pull her basically into the fracas of these Dragoons and the cop. And it's kind of interesting because they're saving her. And obviously as Burke is saving her, she's touching him. And she realizes he's a human. And she's freaked out. She's like, you're disgusting. Get him.
Well, it's not even freaked out. I think she's more repulsed and disgusted, I would say.
Exactly. That she had been in love with a human. But in an interesting turn here, Uncle Cessna steps in. He's just like, hey, he saved your life. He's a hero. You shouldn't treat humans that way. Like, Cessnus is the one who has a change of heart.
Yeah.
After being the Dragoon for so long. And he admits to everyone that, in fact, old Scarface Gorilla, I think his name was Vaughn, he killed Father Lucius.
Yeah, they had like a fight and he fell and hit his head.
Well, they were
on a
fighting about
rock.
how he was befriending humans, and Uncle Cessness covered it up because he agreed with the politics at the time, but now that he's seen a human save her, like he's changed his heart. And Vaughn, the Scar Gorilla, he starts freaking out. He's like, it doesn't matter. I'd kill anybody who helps a human. I'd kill them all. And then like the entire Dragoon force like takes off their master, like, I quit.
I know, I liked it. They just hit the way, and they all just went, whatever. You guys want to get a bite to eat?
They're like, yeah, this guy's crazy.
Yeah.
This whole Dragoon thing, terrible idea.
But we come up to the ultimate moment in the
Yes.
episode. And what is it, Luke?
The gorilla's been arrested. She's been saved from the water. They're saying their goodbyes in front of the ocean. They're sort of just like, it's this uncomfortable goodbye where she's just like, well, I guess I need to learn to maybe like humans some more. And Burke's just like, well, it was a pleasure to meet you. And what does he do, Jordan?
He lays a big old kiss on her.
He leans right in there, gives her a little kiss on the mouth.
Yeah, on her weird, unmoving ape mouth. And it was just, it
might have been more on the nose.
I know what they're going for, but it is still like, you're kissing an ape. It's weird.
I mean, it wasn't a romantic kiss. It was more like how
Yeah.
you'd kiss a child or something.
Yeah.
But
He had his tongue was out though, right?
well, I hope so. It was a funny, weird ending where it was just like, if anything, I'm like, I would wish that it would have loved if they would have committed to it. I don't remember if this was on the podcast last episode, but we were talking briefly about the Tim Burton remake of Planet of the Apes.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when it was coming out, there's a bit of controversy just before it came out because there's a rumor going around that Marky Mark was going to kiss the ape.
Helena Bonham Carter.
Helena Bonham Carter ape. Or there was going to be some sort of love affair, or maybe they were going to have sex. And there was like a huge fracas about like, that's horrible. You can't put that in a movie. And then the movie came out and there's nothing like that in there at all. And here too, I was like, you know what? I would prefer it. Like, just go for it.
What I would have liked is when he went to kiss her, there's an extreme close up of just their two tongues, like just battling.
Just battling up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it was fine. It was a very cute ending. It was just going to show
Yeah.
like, it's okay. You can kiss someone who's not like you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I would have preferred if they were going to go with this analogy that they're not different species, but more that they're different like types of people. Like, I don't know, maybe go for it then.
Wouldn't it be great if Pete was just like, you know what, I'm staying here, and then they just like live happily ever after,
Start a little family?
and Alan and Galen go off.
Oh, Alan and Galen would love that.
Yeah.
They're better friends.
They're much better. They don't have old pessimistic Pete anymore.
He settled down in human ape country.
Just outside of, are they still just outside of
I don't know where
Central City?
I don't know where they are now because they said this area has more humans than apes, so
I
they
know.
can't be that
it's
close.
not clear.
All right, Jordan. Well, let's wrap it up. Do you have any final thoughts on these episodes?
I think I mentioned it once before, and I still sort of have the same feeling, which is I feel like the show has plateaued in terms of where it's going to be. It's not going to get extremely bad. It's not going to get extremely good. I don't think we're going to have anything either, anything too extreme. I think this show has settled into what it is.
I would say that these two episodes at least broke formula. These were less like episodes of The Fugitive. I mean, still elements of them for sure, but these were at least kind of, one was a doctor show and the other one was them inserting themselves into the politics of life, which at least was a change of pace.
I would agree with you. I just don't know if either was very successful.
I don't know how successful the show can get, like as far as that goes.
Yeah,
like
maybe.
they're kind of stuck in the time period they live in, and I at least appreciated they broke formula a little bit and tried something new. You're right; they're not perfect episodes by any means, but
they're far from perfect episodes.
I don't know if I found them as boring as you did.
Maybe not. So what do you think of the first one? I think I know you're gonna like the first one more than I did. What are you gonna give it?
For The Surgeon?
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna give The Surgeon a 7.
Yeah. See, I'm giving it a 5.5.
5.5.
And at least half the thing is just for I like that stone desk. Real smooth drawers.
Oh wow, we were really disagreeing on these episodes.
Yeah.
All right, what about The Deception?
This is my least favorite episode we've watched so far.
Really?
Oh yeah, I found
worse
it.
than The Farm?
Oh, I did not. I really disliked this episode. I just didn't think anything worked. I just didn't like it. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. However,
oh wow,
an extra point. Don't write it down. An extra point for the kiss. 3 out of 10.
3 out of 10.
Yeah.
Well, at least you like something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not going to defend it too much. It wasn't a great episode. It still had moments where the writing was clearly working, or like we're able to land a couple good ideas. Yeah. So I don't think it's...
I think there's an idea there. I just think the execution is all wrong.
I think overall the execution is wrong. I think I liked how Galen showed his prejudice and had to confront that in the episode. I thought that was handled subtly and better than I would have ever expected from this episode. And I did like the blind girl heartbreak thing. It's kind of fun. It was kind of interesting. The Dragoon thing was awkward and like wedged in.
You know what I think what it is maybe it was too many ideas. Like if it was just the idea of like falling in love,
right?
With maybe it would have been an okay episode.
You're right. Maybe that is the problem. It had like too many half-baked ideas.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure where I'm going to land on this. I think you're right about a lot of things though. So I'm gonna go for a 5.
Oh, that's nice. There's something nice about that. Right down the middle.
Right down the middle.
Yeah. That's also the chance, her percentage chance of her living in an ape world, but not being able to see. I'd say it's about 50%.
She was doing just fine.
Yeah, that's true. She did have that cave.
Well, that about wraps it up for the episode, I think. I guess if you want to talk to us about these 2 episodes, if you saw them, you want to talk about blind apes or
hey,
ape surgeons.
I hope we get a lot of emails. Hey, guys, just want to write in. I want to talk about blind apes. Imagine that.
I would like to hear other ape careers. I'd like to hear more about ape careers.
Yeah.
You can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com. Do you think there is like a zoo with a cool blind ape?
I bet there's been a zoo with a blind ape.
Feels like that's an attraction.
Yeah. Well, it'd probably be on the subway if it was. There'd be a subway poster of it right beside the what was it called? The clothes that evaporated. Remember that?
I do remember talking about from when they were under the city and the subways in the BART station.
Yeah, that's for the real. What does Jane always want to say? Dragsters, the real dragsters.
Steve came up with that.
Steve came up with it to watch
dragsters. And of course, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Continuum Drag, where we'll have some little clips and things from these episodes. Probably a bunch of things of merchandise, I assume.
Yeah.
That Jordan found that long laundry list he gave us earlier, and that about wraps it up. Jordan, thanks for coming out again. Listener, thanks for joining us. And I guess we'll see you next time.
See you then. Yeah, me and Alan have the same blood type.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Drexciedler. Produced by Jordan Delic and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes, Adam Wheatner, Jeff Hanley, Jane McRae, and Stephen Packard.